Thanks very much for having me, Manny. I think it's important for us to understand these missile tests through calibration. The North Koreans stopped testing during the 20th Party Congress in China, and of course they've resumed testing in the build up to the midterm elections in the United States. This shows that they're deferring to China in efforts for some support, and they're trying to provoke the United States in many ways to get them back on the table and back on the diplomatic discussion, moving towards diplomatic discussions to try and find some way to move these complicated relations forward.
There are many elements at play here. Some have said the military exercises between South Korea and the United States are behind Pyongyang's latest launches. Others believe it's to see what South Korea's capabilities are in terms of tracking missiles. Who's right here?
I think actually all sides are right. And what we continue to see from the North Korean side is the building of a plethora of different missile systems to evade the existing anti-ballistic missile systems that are based in South Korea, in Japan, and of course on other on ships on U.S. ships. And this is what the North Koreans really are trying to focus on, is how to build enough evasion capability to saturate the existing anti-ballistic missile systems within the region to pressure stakeholders to come to the table for some kind of resolution to the long-term tensions with North Korea.
Now, there's also the matter of if and when North Korea will conduct another nuclear weapons test. Has this sort of behaviour been a precursor to that in the past?
So I think by most analysts, we understand that North Korea has most likely refined its nuclear technology, but what it hasn't refined is its delivery systems and a variety of delivery systems. And I think this is why we're seeing a build-up and an increased number of tests prior to the 20th Party Congress, but also prior to the midterm elections, to demonstrate that North Korea has made a tremendous progress in terms of the kinds of missile systems it's developing, short, mid, and long term. And that allows them to put pressure on South Korea, Japan, and of course the United States in their long-term efforts to secure some kind of regime security and potentially a peace treaty between the South and the North, but of course with the United States as well.
Now, if another nuclear test does in fact take place, how is the region likely to react?
This is complicated. I think our Chinese counterparts will be not happy with a nuclear test. It'll bring more attention to North Korea, more attention in terms of maritime domain awareness, space domain awareness, and cooperation between the United States, South Korea, and Japan. And this is not what the Chinese want right now. They view any kind of cooperation between these three states as potential to peer into Chinese territory and understand where they're placing their missile systems, in particular their nuclear systems, and potentially giving them the edge in terms of creating deterrence capabilities and counter-strike capabilities on China. Japan, South Korea, of course, are worried. They're worried about the test of the North Koreans and the potential for collateral damage in some kind of test, or, of course, the region spiraling into conflict. All in all, I think we should be thinking about the weapons of mass destruction that North Korea continues to produce and develop as highly destabilizing for the region's security structure, and has the potential to cascade into a kinetic conflict that would really devastate the second largest economy, the third largest economy, and the 11th largest economy on the planet, having global repercussions.
Mm-hmm. The United States and South Korea have responded to these launches by Pyongyang by extending their joint military drills. Won't that just make the problem worse?
I think that the message is that the United States and South Korea are determined to create deterrence capabilities against North Korean aggression. They understand that the North Koreans and other states like North Korea only understand power as to negotiate and create the conditions for moving towards peaceful resolution, or again to push back against belligerents. And without working together, the South Koreans and the United States, and pushing back and extending these tests, the North Koreans will see this as weakness. And the North Koreans will try to take advantage of this and really blackmail the South Koreans, the United States, and other partners within the region through more provocative belligerence in the region.
Now, earlier this week, we saw a barrage of missiles being fired by both South and North Korea. At least one landed pretty close to South Korea's shores. Are there measures in place in the event that one of these wayward missiles were to actually hit land?
Well, we've already seen this. I think back in 2007 or 8, the North Koreans launched missiles and artillery into South Korean territory. But the South Koreans are used to the belligerence. They're used to a calibrated reciprocal response. And this is, I think, the most important aspect in dealing with North Korean provocations is not to escalate, but to reciprocate in a way that causes the North Koreans to think twice about the belligerents within the region. Again, the South Koreans have lived under North Korean threat for more than 50 years, 60 years, and they've become finally attuned to how to manage this relationship working with the United States and increasingly with other partners in the region.
Finally, Stephen, you're in Japan, which you touched on this earlier, is in a very precarious position, as well as the aggression between the Koreas. There's also the Taiwan-China situation. On top of that, there's Russia's war with Ukraine. How has the Japanese government responded to all this?
The Japanese are concerned. Their security situation within the region is deteriorated rapidly. As you mentioned, the Russians have engaged in a war of aggression against the Ukraine. The Japanese see this as potentially something that could happen in their backyard, whether it's the Senkaku Islands, the cross-strait relations with Taiwan, or even the South China Sea. About $5.5 trillion of trade goes through the South China Sea. That includes trade to Japan. Those sea lines of communication are essential for the economy to keep going. And of course, the Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company is located in Taiwan. At so many different levels, what happens in this region, whether it's the Russians or the North Koreans or the Chinese, will affect the Japanese, and they're considering how to strengthen their partnerships with the United States, but also Australia, the UK, Germany, Canada, and other middle powers like Japan in an effort to push back against these revisionist states that want to really change the regional order.
Stephen Nagy, we always appreciate your analysis. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Manny.